Hi everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Elisa. Today I'm going to show you how to make my Sally slip dress in a tutorial that lasts just under 15 minutes. So let's go. Alright, the Sally dress is a slip dress that you can either cut on the bias or on the grain line. It is made from silks, satins, or any other type of slippery, silky material. It is super beginner friendly. There are no darts involved, there is no zippers, no buttons, or any such a thing. In this tutorial, you will learn how to line a sleeveless dress top to bottom, which is a nice skill to have. I launched this sewing pattern back in 2023 and it's been a big hit since. It's not been available on my Etsy shop for the last couple of months because I've been reworking a few things about it, nothing major. And now it's back online, so I figured let's make another version of it together. So let's go. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is to join the front and the back of the dress. And I'm going to start with the back because it's a little bit more simple. We have two paper pieces, which we need to join at the underbust seam. The skirt is cut on a fold, so when we open it up, we see this dome shape right here, which is where we're going to attach the top of the dress. So when I remove the paper pattern, we have two separate pieces here that look like this. To join this, we just place it right sides touching. We simply pin the top to the bottom along this underbust seam / I would call it arm side seam because it's in the back, and it's just a flat seam. There's nothing that we need to do here. The only thing that you need to consider here is that right here in this area, in the center back, you want to start or end your seam before you sew over your seam allowance. So don't sew over it like this. Stop right here where I've pinned this needle. And the same goes for the other side, so your seam allowance can continue to roam freely. And this is important for the lining process later. I'm going to sew this down now. The back of the dress is already assembled and it looks like this. We can set this aside for now and do the same thing for the front. We have the same situation in the front where we have the skirt panel cut on a fold, so there's no seam, and we have our bodice pieces looking like this, two separate pieces, which we now need to attach to the skirt at the underbust seam. And you can see here that there's a little notch in the pattern which indicates the start of your underbust. Now that's not true for everybody. This is just a general area that usually proportionally is where it would be. And this first section of the underbust seam we pin and sew flat, and then from here, once we put it together, you will see that some ease appears, and I will show you what we're going to do with that ease. All right, so again, we are placing the two top pieces along the underbust seam like so, and we'll make sure that the fabric is right sides touching. Now here we do the same thing as we have done in the back. Align the ends of your seam allowance. Place the first pin about 1 centimeter away from that edge, and this is where you're going to start sewing. Again, we want to leave the seam allowance free for the lining process later. And now we can start pinning from the center front towards the side until we reach said notch. Once we have reached the notch, we move over to the side and we align the side seams with each other. And we're going to pin backwards towards the center front from here. And by doing so, we will reveal the ease that is accounted for in the bust piece that is not actually in the skirt piece. And this is in lieu of a dart, because this is a completely dartless, beginner-friendly make. Instead of having to sew a dart in here under the bust to give it shape, we have this ease right here, which we're now going to pin in pleats. And this gives a nice little ruffled effect later on and a little lift to the bust area. Very easy, but it has a big effect. And I simply arrange them closely towards the notch. You can spread them out as far as you want, but the more you spread the ease, the less visible it's going to be. The more crowded you keep it, the more you're going to see it on the outside right here. And this is how I intended it. Same thing on the other side. Okay, so once everything is pinned, we can sew it in. Don't forget, you don't want to sew over your seam allowance in the center front area. You start about 1 centimeter short of the edge, which should account for your seam allowance, and then you sew all the way down to the side seam, and you do the same thing on the other side. All right, here we go. And now this is what the front looks like. We've done the same thing here as I have explained with the back, which is that we have this little sort of flower here, as I like to call it, where all of the seam allowances roam freely. And again, this is important for the lining step that comes next. First, I'm going to press all of this neatly, and then I'm going to join front and back of the shell together. Okay, so now that front and back are individually assembled, we can join them together by simply placing them right sides touching. We are going to focus on the side seams. We're going to leave the shoulders open. Again, this is important for the lining process, which comes next. First, I'm going to focus on the underbust seam slash back arm side seam, and that is because this is the only area that's important to match up. So I'm going to place my first pin right here. Then I can pin above it, and then we can pin below it. And the other thing that's important here is to fetch your satin waistband, and this is what's going to snatch the dress in the back, so it's adjustable in terms of how tight it is. So I have 2 meters of the satin tape right here, very simple, nothing too fancy. Just gonna cut that in half real quick, and I'm fetching 1. And while I'm pinning this side seam area, I'm also gonna insert this satin band right here, right under the arm side slash bust seam. I'm gonna give it a bit of an angle, because I know that in the back it's gonna be facing downwards more so than upwards. So I'm just probably pinning it at a 40-degree angle, and I'm placing the pin right on top so it doesn't move around. So once this is done, I can continue to pin the rest of the side seam all the way down to the hem. Okay, now the shell is completed and we can move on to the lining. So with the lining, we have the same situation. It's basically all of the same pieces cut from lining material, which could be anything that corresponds with your shell material. In my case, I've decided to go for micro mesh in black and white. So I'm simply replicating all the same steps that I've just taken with the shell with the lining, except that I don't add any ties in the sides. So let me do that real quick, and then we can join the lining and the shell together. All right, we have the shell completed, and I have a replica of the shell in this mesh material now. Again, the shoulders are open, which is necessary for the lining process. What I'm gonna do now is to put the shell into the lining. I'm going in from the hem, and I just pull it through like this. And then I'm gonna try and find the front and back, like so, and then line everything right sides touching, meaning all the seam allowance is showing on either side, right? So the right sides are facing. And we're starting at the center front right here. And as you can see, all of the seam allowances are roaming freely. I'm going to focus on one side first and place a pin here. And we're basically doing exactly what we've done before, which is that we start sewing right where the pin is all the way up the front neckline, and we're not sewing over the seam allowance. This keeps to roam freely. So basically what we're doing now is that we align the lining and the shell all the way around the neckline as well as the armholes. So when I now move on from here, I can focus on aligning the side seams with each other. I'm going to fold the seam allowance towards the back, pin it down, and then pin along the armhole. Same with the armhole in the back, just continue the same way. And then down the back neckline, again, we are focusing on the center back, letting the seam allowance roam freely. It's the same old trick over and over again. You keep doing this until you have pinned all along the neckline and armholes. All right, now everything is pinned and we can sew. Just again, make sure you keep the shoulder seams open because we need those to overturn everything later. All right, everything's sewn, and now before we turn it around, I am going to snip the seam allowance in the armholes because this is usually where there's a lot of tension. So I'm just snipping around all of the curves, making sure I'm not cutting through the seam I've just placed, and you can see it nicely here because of the white on black. And I don't need to do this in the neckline because if anything, we want the neckline to be nice and sturdy and not too flexible. So I'm going to keep it as it is. All right, now that's done. I'm going to reach inside in between the layers of the lining of the shell, and I'm just going to pull it out. Now I push the lining into the shell skirt. And here we go. We are almost done. This needs a very good press now to make it look beautiful. Here we have the pressed dress and we're almost done. Now we just need to close off the shoulders. For that, I'm reaching again in between lining and shell in the front. And then I am simply trying to push the back into the front and through the hem like this. Now just get it flat like this. And then we just pin everything. So one strap is basically inside the other and then we sew across here. And now I pull it all back out if I can find it. And boom, bada boom, straps are closed. No visible seam allowances anywhere. Look at this, how neat. Let's do the same with the other side and then we're done. Okay, the dress is basically completed and now you just have to hem it. There's like several ways as how you could do this, and it also depends on the weight of your fabric. Because I have more heavyweight stretch fabric, I'm simply going to serge this and fold it over once and top stitch it. You could also alternatively do a rolling hem. Alright, that's it everybody. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this version of the Sally dress. It's my favorite so far. I love the black and white combo. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to give the Sally dress a try, you can now get her on my Etsy shop. Link in description. See you next time. Bye bye.